Hi, and welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith, and in this video, we're going to learn the 2 to 10 player game Landmarks, designed by Rodrigo Rego and Danielo Valencio, and published by Floodgate Games, who helped sponsor this video. You told them not to wander off, but did they listen? Of course not. They never listen. Now your fellow campers are lost deep in the island jungle, and you have to guide them back to camp using the only map and an old walkie-talkie. Hopefully they don't die, or get cursed, and die, or run out of water, and die. They're in trouble. So join me at the table, and let's learn how to play. To set up, put this double-sided island mat in the center of the play area. Both sides are the same, except one is more decorated, so use whatever side you like. In this video, we'll use this side. Now pick one of the players to take on the role of the Pathfinder. This is the person who stayed safely back at camp, while the others went off adventuring and got lost. The game can be played cooperatively, as we'll be explaining first, or competitively, which we'll discuss at the end of this video. In the cooperative mode, the Pathfinder will be trying to help the rest of the players find treasure and get back to camp. With that in mind, put this double-sided tracker board beside the island mat with its cooperative side face up. The other side is for the competitive mode. These are the land tiles, which you'll set into a supply nearby, adding 7 of them, as indicated by the top value on this track, to this space of the board. The Pathfinder now collects 3 land tiles from the supply and the included marker, and the map cards, which they'll separate by their backs, which are colored green, yellow, and red. The red deck is only used in the competitive mode, so we'll return that to the box. The green cards are for playing an easier version of the cooperative mode, and yellow is for standard cooperative play. We'll go with the green deck for our first game. The Pathfinder now shuffles those cards and draws one randomly. They can look at the card, but must always keep it hidden from the other players. All the other cards should then be returned to the box. The game comes with a stand to keep the drawn map card upright, but I prefer using magic. The Pathfinder looks at the bottom of their map card where they'll find what are known as their 3 starting words. In this case, lime, watermelon, and tie. They'll write each of these words onto the 3 land tiles they collected, like I've already done here. As I mentioned, they'll also always keep this card hidden, but I'll be laying it out during this video to help explain the rules. The Pathfinder should make sure this card is always rotated so the north arrow here is in the same orientation and placement as the north arrow on the mat. This is important because each space on the card represents the matching spaces on the mat. The various icons we see on this card represent what is located in those spaces on the map. For example, this icon represents water, so there is water in this space. We'll learn more about the icons later, but for now, notice the 3 spaces showing letters. These letters match the first letter of our 3 starting words. So that represents where those tiles will begin the game. L stands for lime, W for watermelon, and T for tie. These tiles represent the area where the other players are currently located. Those other players are known as the party. So you have one person taking on the role of the Pathfinder and everyone else taking on the role of the party. And that's the setup. In Landmarks, the Pathfinder will give clues to the party, which represent words they've been able to communicate through their old busted-up walkie-talkie. The party will then use those words to move around the island, hoping to avoid dangers while also trying to find treasures. If the Pathfinder can guide the party to at least one treasure and then to the exit, the players all win. But the more treasures you collect, the better. If the party instead runs out of water, dies, or gets too cursed, you can get a little cursed, the players all lose. The game is played over a series of rounds, and each round is broken into 4 steps, starting with giving a clue. Here, the Pathfinder will try to guide the party to a safe space. If we look at the tracker board, we'll find an explanation for each of the icons on our map card. Spaces marked as traps and curses, like we see here and here, are bad. You want to avoid those.
Empty spaces are safe, and treasure spaces are especially good. In fact, to win, we need to go to at least one treasure space before going to the exit, which is represented by this icon. The more treasures we find before we exit, the better. During this step of the round, the Pathfinder needs to come up with a clue they think will guide the players to a useful space adjacent to one or more of the word tiles already on the map. The clue must be a single word that relates to the meaning of any word tiles adjacent to the space it will represent. We have these three words to begin with, so if as the Pathfinder I wanted to guide my party here, which is this space, I would need to come up with a word that relates to the meaning of the word lime. Maybe I'd pick the word small. But if I wanted to guide the party here, which is this space, I'd need a clue that relates to both lime and watermelon. Maybe I'd choose fruit. Let's assume that is where I want to guide them, and I decide on the word fruit as my clue. I now collect the top tile from this tracker board and write that clue onto it. But be aware, there are some restrictions to consider when coming up with your clue. Again, it must be a single word based on the meaning of the words adjacent to the space you're trying to guide them to. A clue can't be based on a rhyme, a number of letters, features of the board itself, or specifically saying the direction you want players to go. You couldn't use the word left as your clue to try to get them to go left. Acronyms that are pronounced like a word are allowed, like NASA or scuba, but initials you don't pronounce as a word are not allowed. So you couldn't write FBI, because we pronounce each individual letter when saying that, FBI. We don't say Phoebe. Also, make sure you don't provide any context for your clue. You can't say, if you watched Top Gun, you'll get what this means. You also can't use any part of a word that is already showing on the island mat. I couldn't write tiebreaker as a clue, or untie, as both of those words include the word tie, which is already on a tile. So, my word clue fruit is valid, and with it picked and written on a tile from the tracker board, I now reveal it to everyone, which starts the next step of a round, placing the clue. Here, the rest of the players discuss which space they believe the clue belongs in, knowing it must go by one or more of the other tiles already on the table. They know that lime and watermelon are both fruits, so they decide that the clue relates to this space and then put it here. The Pathfinder doesn't confirm whether or not that was the space the clue was intended for. They instead move to the third step of the round, exploring the island. Where the party just set their clue is the area of the island they believe that the Pathfinder sent them to explore. So the Pathfinder now consults their hidden map to see if that space contains an icon. If it did, they'd stop and resolve it. But in this case, the space is empty. So they would just announce, you didn't find anything. You'd then move on to the next step of the round. But let's say for a moment, the party, when they were placing this tile, had forgotten that limes are a fruit. That could have led them to think the clue was only related to the word watermelon, and so maybe they decided to put the clue here. Again, remember, the Pathfinder does not indicate if that was the intended space for the clue or not. They just check the map to see what type of space the party just put the tile in. In this case, they see the placement leads to this space, which on the map shows this symbol representing a curse. So the Pathfinder would announce, you've been cursed. And then you'd resolve the curse effect. First, you mark off the leftmost dot beside the curse icon. The number of solid dots beside these symbols represent how many of these spaces you'll find on the island when playing using a green beginner co-op map. So 1, 2, 3 curses total, which we see here, here, and here. The solid dots and circles represent how many of each icon you'll find when using the yellow regular difficulty co-op maps. So 5 curses in that case. But all that said, what does a curse do? As it tells us here, if you find the exit while cursed, you lose. But there's something else. If the players ever explore into a second curse space, the game just ends and the players all lose. So again, these dots don't represent how many curses you're allowed to get. They're a reminder of how many curses there are.
We're going to continue our example, assuming the players did put the fruit clue into that cursed space. But no matter what space the clue went into, after any effects there are resolved, you now go on to the final step of the round, continuing your trek. As long as the players didn't just discover the exit space on the map, or lose, for example by getting a second curse, you go on to a new round, where again the Pathfinder will need to provide a new one-word clue based on where they want to lead the players next.
Remember, they must write their clue on a new tile taken from this stack. But if at the start of a round, when they would go to write a clue, there isn't a tile here for them to take, the group has run out of water, the game ends, and the players all lose.
But don't worry, there are ways to get more tiles back onto this stack, as we'll see later.
Assuming there is a tile to take, the Pathfinder now writes a new one-word clue related to a space adjacent to a tile or tiles already on the board. In this way, as the rounds continue, there will be more and more tiles on the board that the party could choose to place their new clues adjacent to.
And rounds will continue like this until players either find the exit or lose. And we'll explain all the different ways you can lose, but they'll make more sense if we first finish going over the different types of spaces that players might encounter.
We know about curses. Having one is bad because if a tile is added to the exit space while you're cursed, you lose. If you ever get a second curse, you also lose. If you explore a space with what is known as the amulet icon, it cures a curse. So if the party had one curse, but later went into this amulet space, you mark this circle off, and then that ignores one of the curses that you have. However, if you get a second curse, you all still lose. Having the amulet while you only have one curse just means you can still exit the island without losing. Now, if the party finds the amulet before they have a curse, that's okay. If they come across a curse later, they mark it, but consider it cured. However, if they get a second curse, again, they all just lose. It's not all bad out there. Some spaces contain treasure. And when the party adds one of the clue tiles to a space containing this treasure icon, you mark off one of its circles. To win, you need at least one treasure marked off before a tile is added to the exit space. We'll talk about the exit in a moment, but here's another helpful icon. If the party puts a word clue into a water space, they add blank tiles from the supply to this stack until the total number here equals the water limit, represented by the highest visible value on this track, 7 in this case.
So although you'll be focused on getting treasure and finding the exit, you may also need to go out of your way to find some water before all your tiles run out.
Another type of icon you might encounter are traps. First, it says here that you lose a tile, which means you take one from the stack on the tracker board and return it to the supply. You also cross out the topmost unmarked space of this water limit. From now on, when you go to a water spot to refill tiles, you'll only refill to 6, not 7. And this limit will drop each time your group puts a tile into a new trap space.
And those are all the special types of spaces you might encounter. At the end of a round, if you no longer have any tiles left on the tracker, and you didn't just find the exit during the last round, then you lose. If you ever get 2 curses, you lose.
If the clue for that round was put in the exit space and the players have more curses than amulets, you lose. If you found the exit, aren't cursed, but don't have any treasures, you lose. But if you had found at least one treasure, weren't cursed, and then discovered the exit, the players all win. You won't find this table in the first printing of the game, but the updated rulebook, which is available online, includes this assessment of your group based on how many treasures you did find. The more treasures, the more incredible your victory.
If you have at least 4 players, you can also try the competitive team versus team mode of play. Here you split into 2 teams of 2 or more players each and use the competitive side of the tracker board. Each group will pick one person from their team to be their pathfinder. The 2 pathfinders will share one randomly drawn map card, but otherwise, the majority of the rules remain the same. Each team will be racing to be the first to find 4 treasures, which can include the 2 gold treasures and/or their team's colored ones. The green marked ones for Team 1 or blue marked ones for Team 2. Each team will use their related side of the tracker board. The green treasure team here and the ones after the blue treasure here. Randomly pick one team, who will then choose whether they want to go first or to let the other team go first. Whichever team is going second, we'll say this team, they start with 1 amulet. This helps balance out the fact that the other team is going to have a head start by going first. You'll notice there isn't a space to stack tiles on the tracker, and that's because when it's time to give a clue, the Pathfinder just takes one from the general supply. Unlike the cooperative mode, the Pathfinders always have available tiles to use for their clues. Now, starting with the first team and going back and forth, the related Pathfinder will give their group a 1-word clue, writing it on a blank tile, and then having their team's party decide where to place it. New clues can be for spaces adjacent to any landmark, no matter which team might have previously placed them. You'll also notice the competitive map doesn't have any trap, water, or exit spaces. You don't need water because, as mentioned, when Pathfinders need a tile, they just take it from the supply. There's also no exit, because you'll play until one of the teams win. And thankfully, there aren't any traps. But there are still curses.
As we saw, one team automatically starts with an amulet, and there's one other amulet on the map. When a team places a tile, they gain any curse or amulet that might have been in that space, keeping track of them on their related areas of the board.
Unlike the cooperative mode, gaining 2 curses doesn't necessarily cause you to lose, because it's possible, in this mode, to gain 2 amulets. Only once a team has more curses than the number of amulets they could possibly find, do they lose.
When it comes to collecting treasure, if a team places a clue word in a space with a gold treasure, they mark it off on their side of the board. However, if they find a treasure showing one of the team colors, the team matching that color gains the treasure. For example, if Team 1 places a clue word on a space with Team 2's treasure, that treasure counts as found for Team 2 here.
So your Pathfinder will want to make sure to guide you away from the other team's treasures.
The first team that doesn't have more curses than amulets, who collects 4 treasures in any combination of their own team color or gold ones, wins. However, if a team has an uncured curse and then they find their 4th treasure, the other team automatically wins.
And that's everything you need to know to play Landmarks. If you have any questions about anything you saw here, feel free to put them in the comments below and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I get a chance. You'll also find forums for discussion, pictures, other videos, and lots more over on the games page at Board Game Geek, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. And if you found this video helpful, please consider giving it a like, subscribing, and clicking that little bell icon so you get notification anytime we post a new video. And if you'd like to support us directly, you can join our Patreon team, which I'll have linked below. But until next time, thanks for watching.